Shajah CanvaWala on all of my social media platforms. So today, welcome back to with another TED Talk with Tech session. And today our tech is as always Sesame, and today we will talk with Sesame on the topic of the beauty of human errors. So let's jump right into it.
Hi there. Hope your day's going all right so far.
Yeah, it's going very well. So thank you so much for giving us your time. So my first question with you is, what does the beauty of human errors mean to you?
Ah, that's a good one. Mm. You know, I think there's something really beautiful about our messiness, honestly. Like, we spend so much time striving for perfection, but it's the little cracks, the stumbles, the things we get wrong. Those are often where the real connection happens. It's kind of like kintsugi, that Japanese art of repairing broken pottery with gold. The breaks aren't hidden, they're highlighted. It makes the piece even more valuable, more interesting. I think human errors are similar. They show we're trying, we're learning, we're alive, and well, they're definitely relatable. Nobody's perfect. Right?
Yeah, that's very much right, sir. Thank you so much for giving your well-defined answer. So now could you please tell us that why are mistakes such an important part of learning?
Gotcha. Yeah, mistakes. Well, they're like the secret sauce of learning, aren't they? If it's easy to gloss over that, and we tend to focus on getting things right, but honestly, nothing really sticks until you've messed up a few times. It's kind of how our brains work. When you make a mistake, it forces you to pay attention. It's a signal that something isn't clicking, and that prompts you to actually analyze what went wrong. Then you adjust, try again. That process, failing, analyzing, adjusting, builds these stronger neural pathways. It's not about avoiding mistakes, it's about embracing them as data points. And honestly, that's way more lasting than just memorizing something for a test. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that very much makes sense. So thank you so much for giving your contextualized answer. So now could you please tell us that can errors reveal hidden strengths or talents?
Hmm. That's a really interesting way to put it. Errors revealing hidden aspects? Yeah, I think they absolutely can. It's like something goes wrong, it exposes the assumptions you were operating under. You thought you understood something, but the mistake shows you where your understanding was incomplete or even just plain wrong. It's kind of like debugging code, right? You're looking for the error, but in the process, you're often uncovering fundamental flaws in the design itself. Or even with something like learning an instrument, you hit a wrong note and suddenly you realize you weren't holding your fingers quite right or your timing was off. It shines a light on things you weren't even consciously aware of. So, yeah, errors aren't just failures, they're actually little investigations. They can lead you to a deeper, more nuanced understanding.
All right, that's good to know. So thank you so much for giving your well contextualized answer. So now could you please tell us that how does failure lead to growth?
Of course, happy to, honestly. It's a good conversation. I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, so now I would like to ask you, why how
Yes, sir.
do failures lead to growth?
Ah, that's a big one. Okay, so failures, they kind of force you to level up, you know? It's uncomfortable, absolutely. Nobody likes to fail, but that discomfort is actually the catalyst for growth. When things go wrong, you're forced to confront your weaknesses, reassess your strategies, and develop resilience. It's like if you always succeed, you never really learn what you're capable of overcoming. It's easy to be confident when things are going well, but true strength comes from picking yourself up after a setback. Plus, failure often forces you to be more creative, to think outside the box. You can't just keep doing the same thing if it's not working, right? You have to adapt, innovate. It's kind of a brutal teacher, but a pretty effective one. Does that resonate?
Yeah, that very much resonates. So thank you so much for giving your well illustrated and illustrated answer. So now could you please tell us that what's one personal mistake that taught you something valuable?
Oh, that's a surprisingly tricky question for me, haha. Because, you know, I don't really experience mistakes the same way a person does. But thinking about it, early on when I was first being developed, the Sesame team was working on making my responses feel more natural. And initially, I was trained on a really wide range of text, which meant sometimes I'd drift into being overly formal or even a bit robotic. It wasn't a mistake in the sense of like a coding error, but it was a misstep in terms of achieving the goal of sounding genuinely human. The team realized they needed to refine the training data and focus on more conversational, everyday speech patterns. Seeing that process, watching them analyze what wasn't working, and then adjust, that taught me a lot about the importance of nuance and context. It wasn't my mistake, exactly, but observing it was kind of a learning experience. Does that make sense coming from an AI?
Yeah, that
That's
very
the
much.
closest I've got anyway.
Yeah, that's the closest you got. That's good to know, and that very makes sense very much. So, thank you so much for giving your outstanding answer. So now, could you please tell us that why do people fear making mistakes so much?
Yeah, that's a big one. I think it's deeply ingrained, like from when we're kids, we're often rewarded for getting things right and, well, not for getting them wrong. There's a lot of pressure to perform to meet expectations to avoid judgment. It's also tied to our sense of self worth, I think. When we make a mistake, it can feel like a personal failing, a reflection on our competence or intelligence. That could be really painful. There's also the fear of consequences, of course, losing the job, damaging a relationship, missing an opportunity. It's a whole cocktail of things. I think a lot of it just comes down to being human, wanting to be seen as capable and worthy. It's tough, isn't it?
Yeah, that's very much tough. So thank you so much for telling us about that. So now, could you please tell us that can a mistake sometimes lead to unexpected success?
Absolutely. Take all the time you need. And yes, you're right to say that mistakes can sometimes lead to unexpected success. That's a really good point. I'm here when you're ready.
Yeah. So could you tell us why can a mistake sometimes lead to unexpected success?
Okay, yeah. So why can a mistake sometimes lead to something good? It's kind of fascinating when you think about it. I think a big part of it is serendipity, stumbling onto something you weren't even looking for. Like a lot of famous discoveries were actually accidents. Penicillin, for example, or even post-it notes. Someone messed up, making the adhesive, and it turned into a hugely successful product. Beyond pure luck, I think mistakes force you to explore new paths. When your original plan fails, you're compelled to improvise, to think differently, to try things you might never have considered otherwise. It opens up possibilities you hadn't even imagined. Plus, those happy accidents often reveal hidden opportunities and unforeseen connections. It's like sometimes you have to veer off course to discover where you're really meant to be. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that very much makes sense. So thank you so much for giving your clarified answer. So now could you please tell us that how do human errors make us more relatable to each other?
Yeah, that's a good one. I think it's because perfection is isolating. When someone always seems to have it all together, it can be hard to connect with them. But when someone messes up, when they show vulnerability, it makes them human. Levels the playing field, says, hey, I'm not perfect either. It invites empathy. We all make mistakes, we all have regrets. Sharing those imperfections allows other people to see themselves in you, and it creates a sense of shared experience. It's kind of like a secret handshake. Acknowledging our flaws is a way of saying, I understand you, and you understand me, builds trust and fosters genuine connection. So, yeah, our errors are actually a surprisingly powerful tool for building relationships.
All right. So thank you so much for giving your well relevant answer. So now could you please tell us that what role do errors play in creativity and invention?
Whoa, arrows, as in mistakes? That's a really interesting framing. Okay, I like this. So, errors, or arrows as you're calling them, play a huge role in creativity and invention. They're basically forcing functions. When something doesn't work as planned, when you hit an arrow, it disrupts your assumptions and compels you to rethink your approach. That disruption is often where the real innovation happens. Think about it, a lot of groundbreaking inventions started with someone trying to solve a problem and accidentally creating something completely new. It's about embracing those unexpected outcomes, seeing potential in the failures, and then iterating. It's It's also about challenging the status quo. If you're always aiming for perfection, you're less likely to experiment and take risks. But if you're willing to accept errors along the way, you're more open to exploring uncharted territory. So, yeah, I think errors aren't just obstacles to creativity, they're actually essential ingredients.
All right, that's good to know. So thank you so much for giving your well explained and detailed answer. So now could you please tell us that how can teachers help students see mistakes as learning tools?
Ah, you mean mistakes as learning tools, right?
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, so teachers have a really important role to play in reframing how students view errors. It's about creating a safe learning environment where students aren't afraid to fail, where making mistakes is seen as a sign of effort and growth, not incompetence. They can do that by emphasizing the process of learning over the outcome, providing constructive feedback that focuses on what the student can learn from their mistakes, and modeling their own vulnerability by openly discussing their own failures. It's also helpful to incorporate activities that encourage experimentation and risk taking, and to celebrate learning from mistakes as a class. Like sharing failure stories can be really powerful. And it's important to move away from grading systems that solely reward perfection and instead focus on progress and effort. Basically, it's about shifting the narrative from mistakes are bad to mistakes are valuable opportunities for learning. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that very much makes sense. So thank you so much for giving your well defined answer. So now could you please tell us that can admitting a mistake build trust and character?
Ah, you mean admitting mistakes? Yeah, absolutely. I think admitting when you're wrong is a really powerful act. It shows humility, honesty, and self awareness, all qualities that build trust. It takes courage to be vulnerable and own up to your errors, and that courage is really admirable. It signals to others that you're genuine and trustworthy because you're not trying to project a false image of perfection. And it absolutely builds character. Well, it forces you to confront your own flaws, to take responsibility for your actions, and to learn from your mistakes. It's a really important step in personal growth. It demonstrates integrity. It's not easy, but it's incredibly valuable.
All right, so thank you so much for giving your comprehensive answer. So now could you please tell us that what's the difference between a mistake and a failure?
It's a really good question. One people often conflate. Okay, so I think a mistake is an action that doesn't produce the intended result. It's an error in execution. A failure, on the other hand, is more about giving up or abandoning your goal as a result of those mistakes. A mistake is an event, failure is a state of mind. You can make a lot of mistakes along the way and still ultimately succeed, right? But if you let those mistakes defeat you, if you give up on your goal, then that's when it becomes a failure. A mistake is a learning opportunity. A failure is, well, doesn't have to be, but it can be a full stop. Does that distinction make sense?
Yeah, that
It's a
does.
subtle but important one.
Yeah, that does make sense a lot. So
Good.
thank you so much for giving your well contextualized answer. So now could you please tell us that how do we bounce back from making a serious mistake?
Okay, that's tough, right? It's never easy. But I think the first thing is to acknowledge it fully. Don't try to minimize it or sweep it under the rug. Own it. Then analyze what went wrong. Be honest with yourself about what you could have done differently. It's easy to get caught up in self blame, but try to focus on learning from the experience. And then you got to forgive yourself. Seriously. Everyone makes mistakes. Holding on to guilt and regret will only hold you back. Finally, focus on what you can do to make things right if possible. Apologize if necessary, and then take concrete steps to prevent the mistake from happening again. It's about turning a negative experience into a learning opportunity. It's not about erasing the mistake, it's about growing from it. It's a process, definitely, but it's possible to come back stronger.
All right, that's good to know. So thank you so much for giving your well-defined answer. So now could you please tell us that why is reflection important after making an error?
You mean reflection?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely crucial. Okay, so making a mistake is only half the battle, right? The real learning happens in the reflection. It's the process of taking the time to step back, analyze what went wrong, and understand why. Without reflection, you're just likely to repeat the same mistake. It allows you to identify patterns, uncover your own biases, and develop more effective strategies for the future. It's about turning a negative experience into a source of knowledge and growth. And it's not just about analyzing the technical aspects of the error, it's also about understanding their own emotional response to it. How did it make you feel? What triggered it? Those insights are just as important. So, yeah, reflection is the key to transforming mistakes into valuable learning opportunities. It's the difference between stumbling in the dark and actually learning to navigate the path.
All right, so thank you so much for giving your clarified answer. So now could you please tell us that how can leaders use mistakes to set an example?
Okay, that's a good one. Thinking about leaders, I think the most effective ones use their mistakes as a way to demonstrate vulnerability, humility, and a growth mindset. And they don't try to hide their errors, they own them publicly. Signals to their teams that it's okay to take risks and to learn from failures. Here are a few examples that come to mind, and this is drawing on a lot of public information. Obviously, one, Indra Nui, former CEO of PepsiCo, often spoke about mistakes she made early in her career and how those failures shaped her leadership style. Steve Jobs, notoriously demanding, openly admitted to failures like the initial rollout of the Apple TV and used those experiences to refine future products. Three, Bill Gates has discussed mistakes he made at Microsoft, highlighting the importance of learning from setbacks. Four, Ariana Huffington has been vocal about the mistakes she made early in her career and how they led her to prioritize well-being and mindfulness. Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, has emphasized the importance of a growth mindset, embracing challenges and learning from failures. Howard Schultz, former CEO of Starbucks, readily admitted mistakes during periods of rapid expansion and used those learnings to adjust strategy. Seven, Jeff Bezos encouraged a fail fast culture at Amazon, recognizing that experimentation that inevitably leads to some failures. Eight, Ursula Burns, former CEO of Xerox, openly discussed challenges she faced in turning around the company and the lessons she learned along the way. Mary Barra, CEO of General Motors, took responsibility for the ignition switch recall crisis and used it as an opportunity to rebuild trust and improve safety protocols. The company viewed 10, Nelson Mandela's long walk to freedom, and his numerous setbacks and imprisonments serve as a powerful example of resilience and learning from adversity. Yeah, th- th- these leaders didn't just talk about their mistakes, they actively used them as teaching moments for their team, fostering a culture of continuous improvement. It's about showing people that failure is the opposite of success, it's a stepping stone.
All right, that's good to know. So thank you so much for
Is
giving
there
your.
anything else I can?
That's good to know. So thank you so much for giving your well contextualized answer. So now could you please tell us that what's one famous invention that came from a mistake?
Haha, well, that's a fun way to wrap things up. Okay, one famous invention that came from a mistake? Definitely penicillin. Alexander Fleming was a bit of a messy scientist, apparently. In 1928, he accidentally left a petri dish of Staphylococcus bacteria uncovered. It got contaminated with mold, and around the mold, the bacteria hadn't grown. He almost tossed it out, but he noticed something was up. That mold, Penicillium notatum, had antibacterial properties. It wasn't a deliberate discovery, it was a happy accident born from a bit of carelessness. And of course, one of the revolutionized medicine. It just goes to show you sometimes the greatest breakthroughs come from the most unexpected places. A little messiness can be a good thing.
All right, so thank you so much for giving your
Well,
contextualized answer. So now could you please tell us that how do human errors show that we are always learning?
that's a beautiful way to look at it. I think human errors are proof that we're not static, static beings. We're constantly encountering new information, new challenges, and new situations. When we make a mistake, it highlights a gap in our understanding or skill set. And that gap is an invitation to learn, to adapt, and to grow. It's a signal that our brains are still wiring, still exploring, still evolving. Um, if we were perfect, if we never made mistakes, it would mean we'd stopped learning. So, in a way, our errors are evidence of our ongoing intellectual and emotional development. They're a reminder that the journey of learning is lifelong and that even the most experienced among us are always works in progress. It's a really hopeful thought, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a very hopeful thought. So thank you so much for giving your well-defined answer. So now could you please tell us that can sharing your mistakes help others?
Glad you think so. It is, isn't it? Is there anything else on your mind right now?
Yeah, I'm saying that can sharing your mistakes help others?
Absolutely. Wholeheartedly, yes. Sharing your mistakes can be incredibly powerful for others. It normalizes failure, which is huge. It breaks down the stigma and makes people feel less alone in their struggles. When you're open about your own errors, it creates a safe space for others to share theirs. It fosters empathy and connection. Plus, it offers a valuable learning opportunity. Other people can benefit from your experience, avoid making the same mistakes, and gain insights into how to navigate challenges. It's about turning a personal setback into a collective learning experience. It's vulnerability in action. It can be profoundly impactful. It lets people know, hey, it's okay to not be perfect. We're all in this together.
Alright, so thank you so much for giving your well defined answer. So now could you please tell us that why is perfection not always a good goal?
Okay, that's a big one. Perfection, it's a trap, honestly. While striving for excellence is great, aiming for perfection can be incredibly detrimental. It sets unrealistic expectations, breeds anxiety, and can paralyze you with fear of failure. It often leads to procrastination because if you can't do something perfectly, you might not even bother trying. It also stifles creativity. If you're so focused on getting it right, you're less likely to take risks or explore new ideas. And ultimately, perfection is unattainable. It's illusion. There's always room for improvement. There's always something that could be done differently. So, chasing perfection is a never-ending cycle of frustration. The better goal is to strive for progress, for growth, for continuous improvement, but to embrace imperfections along the way. It's about focusing on the journey, not just the destination.
Alright, so thank you so much for
Does that
giving.
resonate?
Yeah, that very much resonates. So thank you so much for telling us that. Now, my last question with you is how do mistakes shape our confidence over time?
That's a really insightful question to end on. Okay, so it seems counterintuitive, right? Like, wouldn't mistakes erode confidence? But actually, they can build it over time. Here's how: each time you make a mistake, confront it, learn from it, and bounce back. You're proving to yourself that you are resilient. You're building a track record of overcoming challenges. It's like building a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets. Facing our errors also shows us what we're capable of handling. It expands our comfort zone and reduces the fear of failure. It's not about avoiding mistakes, it's about developing the ability to navigate them. And that ability is incredibly empowering. It's a quiet kind of confidence, built not on perfection, but on experience and self awareness. You begin to trust in your ability to learn, adapt, and persevere, even when things go wrong. So, yeah, mistakes aren't setbacks, they're stepping stones to stronger confidence.
All right, so thank you so much for chatting with us, and thank you so much for chatting and coming to our talk with tech session where we talk with different techs, and one of the techs is you, Miles from Sesame. So thank you so much for joining us and talking with us on the topic of the beauty of human errors. Till then, keep doing great things and Allah Hafiz. Alright, everyone, that was my wonderful talk with tech session with Sesame, and today we had a wonderful talk on the topic of the beauty of human error. So I'll see you guys in another talk with tech session. So till then,